Nikki Medora, what's
Hello,
up?
hello.
Hello. This is an interesting time as we talk, obviously, about impeachment and move toward it. We mentioned earlier, I didn't really do the story about how Andrew Yang says maybe he doesn't think we should. I think I don't think that sentiment is anywhere anymore. I think after what we've seen with Ukraine, and forget the quid pro quo, just the simple part that he asked another government to interfere.
Right, exactly.
But the movement forward, we have to think about, and I say this all the time. When Trump's gone, we still have Putin. We still have a fractured NATO. And how can those people trust us anymore? 73% of Americans think we have a good relationship with Germany. 73% of Germans think we have a horrible relationship with the United States.
Yeah, but I think a lot of that can rest on the lap of Donald Trump. And if you remove Donald Trump, then I think more countries would probably be willing to trust us again.
There's a movement that you may or may not have heard of. I think if you're slightly woke, you know what I'm talking about. It's called the Indivisible movement, and there's a book right now written, and the two authors are the founders and the co-executive directors of this project. And recent Time 100 most notable, what is the word? I
think it's most attractive.
There you go.
There you go. I like that.
I said that's Ezra, Levin, and Leah Greenberg here. Nice enough to join us. I got your names right. Good? Did I?
Yes,
Good.
that's
Okay.
great. Yep.
So let's explain in the elevator pitch of the Indivisible movement for people that haven't heard of it, maybe.
Yeah, so Indivisible started right after the 2016 election. We were former congressional staffers. We were going through the stages of grief just like a lot of progressives, and we landed on anger. And we were there trying to figure out what could we do. And as former congressional staffers, we didn't really have any applicable skills, but we know how Congress works. And so we thought, hey, we saw how the Tea Party was used against us. They didn't agree with their racism, their violence, some of their tactics, but we thought they were smart to focus on their elected officials. And in 2016, after we lost the election, we knew we didn't have agenda-setting power, but we had the power to respond. Now, that didn't mean that Donald Trump cared what we think. But we knew that our individual elected representatives care what we think, because those representatives, and we can say this as former congressional staffers, they wake up every morning thinking, how am I going to win re-election? And that gives people a lot of power, actually, because if you organize locally, focus on your senators and your representative, and never give an inch, you can change their behavior. And the proof has been in the pudding. Now, we put out this Google Doc guide hoping to demystify Congress, and maybe it would be useful to some folks. Shockingly, people read it, and then even more shockingly, they started putting it into action. Yes, in San Francisco and California, but everywhere in the country. There are now Indivisible groups literally in every congressional district in the country, from the reddest red to the bluest blue. These are the groups that showed up at town halls in 2017 to fight back against the repeal of the Affordable Care Act, the rescinding of DACA, the tax bill. Then they helped build the wave in 2018, and we're still going.
I wonder, just by saying not giving an inch, I kind of worry sometimes that can be taken too far and that we end up where no one's giving an inch and then we're just stuck in gridlock. How do you deal with political gridlock when, hopefully Donald Trump doesn't get reelected, but even if he does, we still have things we need to get going in this country?
Well, one of the things that we talk about in our book, We Are Indivisible, is that we've got a real problem, which is that we've got a political system where if you're in the minority, you actually win by creating gridlock. And that's why we saw all through the Obama administration, Republicans blocked everything. They wouldn't come to the table on health care. They wouldn't come to the table on gun violence prevention.
Merrick Garland wasn't nominated.
Merrick Garland, yep. Really pretty much anything, campaign finance reform, you name it. And that's not because they don't want to compromise. It's because they think that the way they get back into power is by preventing Obama from doing anything.
Can I push back a little on that? I think that the Founding Fathers, and especially the Federalist Papers, they kind of created the triangulation of government to put a check, to kind of create a gridlock when the S hit the fan, like it is now. I think we saw that in 2018 when the Democrats took back the House. And obviously, we knew we're not going to pass legislation, but we knew we could stop some of the more injurious ideas coming out of McConnell or McCarthy or Trump or whomever, right? But I get what you're saying. I know that we have to be able to think, right now, healthcare, 25 million Americans had healthcare pulled out from underneath them when he dismantled Obamacare. And there's no substitute, and we have to worry about that. And of course, internationally, there's a lot of issues as well. So, I think what Indivisible when I heard about you guys and I followed it, what I loved it was kind of what you said before. It made Congress people on both sides realize, as soon as they get in, the first day in, the whip says, you're going to do what we say. If you want to stay here, you're going to listen, right? The longer you're there, the more freedom you have. But you look at people like Duncan Hunter, you know, who has felony indictments. He's running again, and he's damn well probably going to win again, right? Amar Campo Najjar is a friend, and this brilliant kid, worked hard. And he's sending out stuff saying he's a terrorist. I mean, so pushing back, you know, what your word stands to me is at the heart of this.
Well, I think that brings us to the second part of the problem, which is that it's not normal to have a political party that's just been captured by the most reactionary conservative parts of the party. And that's what we're seeing with the modern Republican Party.
Is it really conservative, or is it just chaotic? I mean,
I think that's a great point. There's nothing conservative about wanting to drag us back to the 19th century. Their opposition,
1950s is what they're thinking, the racial part of that,
I
right?
think they're not even just trying to undo Obama's legacy. They're not even just trying to undo LBJ's legacy. They want to undo Wilson's legacy and not just Franklin Roosevelt's, Teddy Roosevelt's legacy. They want to take us back to the 1890s when there were a set of robber barons who could own and control the entire country's political system.
Well, think about McCarthyism, Roy Cohn, and, you know, Trump, that was his mentor. I mean, there's so much about these guys. It's just not enough time. I mean, right? I mean, I know you guys must, you talk to people, you do these interviews. I'll shut up and let you say some more. But I mean, I know it's got to be frustrating to get to that, not the blue dog Democrat or the moderate Republican, but the people just to the right of that, the base that aren't bad people, but they just don't understand the system. And Trump has just sowed the seeds of conspiracies and mistrust. How can we break through that?
Yeah.
We need a representative democracy that actually reflects the will of the people. And you're saying that the founders set up a system to ensure that it was somewhat difficult to get things done. You wanted power to check power, and that is absolutely right. But the founders did not conceive of a system that would allow 11% of the population to block popular legislation. And that's what we've got right now with the U.S. Senate and the filibuster. That's what happens. If you ask yourself, why can't we get a vote on popular gun violence prevention legislation that is 90% approval? Why can't we get a vote on healthcare legislation or climate legislation or tax legislation that is wildly popular? The answer is because our system of government does not actually reflect the will of the people as well as it should, even as well as the founders intended. So there are reforms we can do. And yes, there's not enough time to do everything we need to do, but the book is not focused on some far out utopia 10, 20, 30 years down the line. We have a house that is on fire right now. In the next 15 months, we could be implementing massive legislation. We just need to build the political will to do it. That means winning in 2020, but it means more than that. It means building the political will so in 2021, we're actually demanding that this legislation gets done.
Well, what about Citizens United? I mean, it's the 11%, but it's also the money.
Yeah.
It's
Absolutely.
the money until you get money out of politics.
Yeah.
You're not going to get money out.
But that's what I'm
You're
saying.
just
But
not.
when you have someone like, let's
too
just
much
say
money in it.
Elizabeth Warren gets the presidency, right? I mean, she understands this. I fully believe, although I don't agree with everything that she's going for, I don't think that she's going to be able to reach across the aisle. If she could get that done, that changes this country.
But it's like telling a rabbit not to run
hey,
fast.
Citizens United didn't always exist.
That's right.
That's right. Well, and
It
that
didn't
brings-
always
Well, no,
exist.
but it did. What Citizens United just okayed what they've been doing for
Right, but we could
decades.
also make it not okay.
That's right.
Well, and I think that brings us to another connected problem, which is that there is now a Federalist Society majority on the Supreme Court. They're the ones who said that corporations are people. They're the ones who said that unchecked corporate money in politics is okay.
It's funny you call them Federalists because in a way they act more like anti-Federalists, right? Don't they? I mean,
It's an ironic name, isn't it?
yeah.
Yeah, but fundamentally, as long as that kind of reactionary Republican cabal controls the Supreme Court, that's going to place an upper limit on any kind of legislation in this country or any kind of good government reforms. So that's a big problem.
And we have to recognize, look, the conservative, the modern Republican Party, which is a reactionary party, they understand their policy agenda is unpopular. That cutting taxes for corporations and millionaires is not a popular strategy. Installing these religious right extremists on the judiciary is not a wildly popular policy. They also know, they're not dummies, they know the country is getting more diverse and more unequal. And so they look at that changing electorate and they say, well, shoot, we can either moderate our policies or we can systematically disenfranchise this rising electorate. And they've made their choice. And we got to be clear, it's not just Trump. Trump is a bulbous bile-spewing symptom, but he is a symptom of a much
cancer.
more deeper, a much deeper problem afflicting our society. And that means we have to recognize we are going to get rid of Trump. We're going to do what we need to do in order to kick him out of office. But the forces that allowed him to rise were decades in the making.
Well, think about Plato's idea. I mean, not all of it, but think of the idea that the people that served did it for honor, okay? Very little money, and they were select people, but they got nothing for it. They just had the honor of being able to serve people. Yep. Where is that thing, right?
Well, so we're former congressional staffers, so we're a little bit more cynical than your average person. But I would say we got to construct a political system that doesn't depend on everyone acting like their most honorable self. We want to set it up so that your incentives to do the right thing are actually in line with your own personal incentives.
Well, no, that makes total sense. I mean, some of the answers are very pragmatic. I think, for example, if you made the filibuster have to be that one person until they, I mean, back in I remember hearing stories of friends that worked on the Hill. They would fall off the lectern. They would fall asleep and literally hit the ground. But today, of course, it's, you can take breaks and that's where cloture kind of lost its power. The internal rules of the Senate, I don't know how you do that. Have they're not going to pass the legislation to constrict themselves.
I'll tell you how it's going to go down. We are going to elect a pro-democracy president. We are going to elect a pro-democracy Congress. And on January 21st...
And sack the Supreme Court?
Well, so we're going to get there. So on January 21st, after that new inaugural address, the House is going to introduce a pro-democracy package. They're going to pass it because they can do that with a majority. They're going to send it to the Senate, and then Mitch McConnell or some Mitch McConnell doppelganger is going to filibuster and say, nope, we're not going to do this even though you've got a mandate. And then the Senate will have a choice. And so if there is a grassroots movement demanding that they change, and if there is a president demanding that they change it, they will sack the filibuster, and they will pass that wildly popular pro-democracy legislation. That's the only pathway forward for getting that done.
The book is called We Are Indivisible, and we're joined by the authors. The reviews on this, I'm really anxious to read this. Is excited. I'd heard of you guys before, and I'm familiar with you. I love the subtitle, Blueprint for Democracy After Trump. After Trump, we're still going to have Putin. Yeah. After Trump, we're still going to have populism. That is, the resurgence of populism scares me the most because, you tell people, what is democracy? Democracy in its form is mob rule. We have a representative republic. Just that basic thing teaching people would be, that's just one thing, if we could get that across the nation.
But look, there's a worldwide surge in white nationalism. That is happening all over the world, not just in the United States. Finland has 20% of the population that's going to vote for white nationalists. But the difference between our system and Finland's is that we somehow have given control of the entire federal government to that small minority because our system of government is not set up to show that, look, we have a vast majority of people who want gun violence prevention legislation, that want climate legislation, that want healthcare legislation. And instead, we have these reactionary wackadoodles who are running the entire government. We can change that, though. That is a choice. And some of the rest of the world has figured out how to do that, except that you're going to have some of these white supremacists, but ensure that they don't have control of the levers of power.
The great irony is, to grow our GDP, we need immigration. Boomers are retiring and dying. We need about 15 million people to come in this country to get that 3.5% to 4% growth. The only people that are going to do that are people of color from bordering countries. They're the ones. So when I hear, who was it? Was it Cuccinelli? Who was the guy that did the quote about?
Cuccinelli.
Yeah. Was it? Is it Cuccinelli? Did I get it right?
May well.
Yeah,
probably.
He's the guy that said, that he rephrased liberty. About give us you're tired, you're poor,
right.
who can stand on their own 2 feet. I about spit when I heard that. To me, those answers. If we told people, immigration's the key to securing your job. Immigrants aren't taking your jobs. Robots are taking your jobs.
Well, and immigration is an American value, right? Like this is
it's supposed to
fundamentally
be
about being a welcoming country.
Unless you're a Native American, yeah.
Right.
But this is why anti-immigrant hate is the heart of Trumpism. He launched his campaign attacking immigrants in 2015. He ran on in 2016. His first actions in 2017 were attaching Muslims and immigrants and refugees.
Did we blow it in our response? Do you think the progressives? No, I mean in 2016. It seems to me that he always seems to win the day of the argument.
Because people bend themselves into pretzels to defend him. It's like, he didn't mean this. This is what he really meant. I don't care what he said. I care what he does. Blah, 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 blah.
So, I think the emperor has no clothes and is being revealed to have no clothes.
Hold that thought. We're going to come back to the emperor and no clothes. Okay, I want to talk about it again.
Not that I want people picturing Donald Trump without
don't
clothes.
pause
Sorry.
on that.
We've seen those statues. We Are Indivisible is the book, A Blueprint for Democracy After Trump, and we're joined by the authors, Leah Greenberg and Ezra Levin. Don't go anywhere. They're next. Nikki Medora right there on left of your radio dial. Looking at wave at her right now. There you go. She's waving back. Thanks for being with us. Follow us on Twitter at Chip Franklin, and you can see my videos, Not Safe for Work. You should check them out. Leah Greenberg and Ezra Levin here. They are the co-executive directors of the Indivisible Project and recent Time 100 honorees. Congratulations, guys. The book is called We Are Indivisible, A Blueprint for Democracy After Trump. what is the world going to look like in 10 years from what we've experienced now? Did we learn a lesson, or is that lesson yet to be totally unfolded?
Well, we wrote this book because we think that we're at a real crossroads right now, and the path that we take is going to determine whether we are in one world or another in 10 years. One world is permanent conservative control of the federal government, of the courts, of the Senate, of everything that's needed to keep their reactionary agenda in power. And that rule depends on disenfranchising people across this country, especially people of color, especially young people, in order to stay in power. Because fundamentally, it's not a popular agenda they have. It's actually an agenda that depends on keeping people out in order to put it into action.
Look, in 20 years, 70% of the population is going to live in 13 states because people are clumping together in states. That means 30% of the population.
They'll all be in front of me in traffic here in San Francisco.
Right, everybody else will be here.
30% of the population is going to be spread out across all of the other states. That 30% is more rural, more white, more conservative, and they are going to have 74 senators. They're going to have 74 senators, so permanent control of the Senate and by connection the courts. That is our future. That is destiny, unless you change something in the near term. So we wrote this book because this is not some far-off future that we have to combat. We are going to have a limited window of opportunity in 2021.
Let me ask you guys, why does the Commerce Clause cover almost every aspect of our daily lives? It allows the federal government to come into, it allows Trump to say he's going to, take money away from us for fighting wildfires. But we can't tell Ohio to redistrict something so black people can't vote. I mean, right now have a vote. Why is it the Commerce Clause doesn't involve voting as well and give the federal government more control over states and what they gerrymander?
We can end gerrymandering in 2021. Full stop. We can end it in 2021. There is legislation that has already passed the House that institutes independent redistricting commissions so it doesn't become a political process. Gerrymandering can be a thing of the past.
And voter intimidation as well. Pulling them off the rolls, just literally.
That's right. We are fighting these fights, again, not just Donald Trump. We are fighting these fights in Georgia and in North Carolina and in Arizona and in North Dakota. There is a full-scale attack on voting rights in this country. You can pass federal legislation to combat that, and I know that because we've done it before.
One thing I would add to that, when you say, why can't we stop gerrymandering via the federal courts? Well, I would ask, why did 5 Republican-appointed Supreme Court justices intervene to stop a recount in Florida and put a Republican president in 20 years ago? We got to admit, the courts have been used for political gain for a very long time. And so it's not about what's the right interpretation of the Constitution with these folks. It's about what's going to actually help my guys, my team, keep winning.
Well, and Madison and Hamilton had no idea the court would work out like this.
Well, the Congress wouldn't do their job.
Well, that too, but I mean that the court would have this kind of Marbury versus Madison. Well, that was the big one, right, that changed it, right? And I don't know. I just think that, it's, first of all, I appreciate what you guys are doing because I know there's lots of money in it too. So, right?
I know. I'm sure you guys are rolling in the dough.
Making
Yeah.
On that note, we don't get a dime from this book. We wrote it. 100% of author proceeds goes to Indivisible Save Democracy.
Oh, nice.
All right.
Nice.
Well, you know what, guys? Please consider us friends. No, I'm serious. Well, thanks for what you do, man. Don't be be strangers. Be neighbors. All right.
There you go.
Great.
Thanks again, guys.
Thanks,
Really
guys.
good.
Thank you.
All right. Again, the book is called We Are Indivisible, a blueprint for democracy after Trump. We've been talking to the authors, Leah Greenberg and Ezra Levin. Coming up, Mike Larson is going to join us. Mike's running against Jim Jordan in Ohio, and he's a good friend of mine who is, I've committed to do these videos for him. And I really, you know what?
Good.
I know it
Are you
seems
gonna
like
make
a
him
long
suitable
shot.
for work?
No. They're going to be just as nasty as the ones I make. Anyway, we'll talk to Mike next on KGO.